Okay, today's project is preventive maintenance. I've got a Datsun 280Z which uses a overhead cam, and this is the overhead cam oiling tube. It bolts to the into the head, and it has a tiny little hole here which feeds through this gallery. So in other words, the oil goes in here, feeds up through here, and squirts oil up. Tiny little holes that point right at the cam lobes. My concern is not knowing the history of the car meant I wasn't too sure about how well this was functioning, how well it was oiling, blah blah blah, because you know it's old and it could be clogged up. So the first thing I did is I took this off, and I cleaned the galleries out with a cleaning spray to make sure there was nothing plugged up. It looked good. The next thing I did was I removed the bunged up gaskets that were on here. You can basically see the shape they were there. I'm pretty glad I did this anyway, because these gaskets were really falling apart, and my concern is that they just rely on the gasket material to seal between this and a little hole out of the cam tower with the cam bearing squirts oil into it. So what we did was made some fresh gaskets out of some regular gasket material. I first used a hole punch to kind of get me in a ballpark, like this, right here. Okay. Make sure, oh, well, you know what I mean, I gotta get this oriented right. It's like a little puzzle. Right, but that hole's too big on the bottom. At least it was according to the original gasket, so I tightened that up a little bit. I now have a nice tightly fitting gasket. What I'm gonna do next is just use tiny little bit of sealer. Now this is just tack glue. This is not like RTB. The idea here is just to keep the gasket in place, especially over that tiny little hole, to make sure it doesn't cover it up. And then I'll put it back together, and that way I'll know that I've got a good clean oiling rail for the camshaft, and I've got a couple nicely fabricated gaskets here to go back and make sure it has a good sealing surface there, and there's no loss of oil pressure going through that little tube into these sprayers. Anyway, that's today's project. Just a little preventive maintenance. More later. Okay, so now I've got the gaskets tack glued into place. I made sure that the bottom hole was lined up. The oil hole right here, and I just trimmed these openings to make sure they wouldn't interfere when I tried to put the nuts in. I wouldn't want to like start moving the gasket around because that's a little too tight. So I'll go back and clean that up a little bit more. The hole punch I used wasn't quite big enough, but that's it. It's basically ready to go. And we should be good to go now. Install it back in and give it a try later. Now this is the stuff I used. High tack gasket seal. You just use that to glue gaskets down. That's so they don't shift around. It's not meant to seal anything, just to kind of glue them. More later.